Welcome to Podcasters Row. Kick a Podcast here with you. Thank you for listening to the program, finding it, subscribing to it as you do. And we have some great guests to go and bring on the programs today. Another great set of experts that are on with us to go and talk about their podcast, and specifically, just to give you the heads up, from time management tips to practical strategies for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. The experts and guests on the Proactive Podcast will provide valuable insights and real-life experiences. Both the two of the three guests are the hosts of the program are on with me today, and they're both accomplished authors and various other expertise. We're going to bring them on right now. I'm here with Richard Sharratt and Arthur Van Dam from the Proactive Podcast. Gentlemen, thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, and also I know Dr. Tina Cooper-Smith is also a co-host of the program as well, but she can't join us today, but wanted to make sure she's mentioned on the podcast. And Proactive, as the show's mentioned, it is achieving the perfect balance between productivity, health, and fitness. So, Richard, I'll start with you. I don't know if it's you or Arthur necessarily who really are the moderator or the person that kind of like heads things up, but what is it about that triad of productivity, health, and fitness that you thought would make for a good synergy for a podcast?
So, first of all, thanks for having us on.
Sure.
So Arthur and I, we met in the gym, and we used to work out together. We were chatting, just saying, about life, how hard it is going to work, trying to find the time to do the things you really enjoy, actually enjoying that time that you do find, and trying to cram as much into a day as possible. So Arthur had an amazing spreadsheet, and I'll let him go into detail of that in a little bit, but
sure.
We came up with the idea for an app. Initially is how it started, called Productivity Go. And the app was meant to create a more of a unique instance for an individual to be able to go find courses that would make them more productivity orientated. And after they became more productive at work, then they would free up the time to be able to work on the wellness. And what we say is that it's a triple hat, so it's the mind, body, and soul is how we work.
Right, you got the knowledge base within the app, Productivity Go, and that is kind of the onus of where the podcast said, well, we shouldn't just have the resources here. We also want to have kind of a gateway to kind of bring people to the app, but also at the same time, we want to go ahead and spread the message of these three tenets that make for a productive and successful life through productivity, planning, fitness, and well-being. So there's a lot of podcasts that will probably just do one of those components. And either one of you, Richard or Arthur, want to answer, what is it about putting it all together that you feel like you can easily find the best way to go ahead and get that message out there and just get people to go ahead and want to say, okay, this is not too overwhelming what you're trying to say, the idea of trying to go and do all this together, or that some people feel like this might be too much work to do?
I think life is so complicated and fast-paced today that we need to simplify. We're bombarded by tens of thousands of messages, ad messages, drains, dragging, grabbing our time. Some way to simplify things to achieve a better balance, and everything's interconnected. So when not to give a tale of woe, but when I was getting divorced in 2007, I went from a house of 5 to a house of 1, and it was kind of a downer, even though the marriage was not a good match. Mm-hmm. And I missed my kids terribly. And so to break that, I started going to the dry cleaner 2-3 times a week. And I have a post box, and I was going there 2-3 times a week. Nothing is 10-15 minutes by the time you get a cup of coffee and you see your neighbor. So I started being the CPA that I am. I put in this spreadsheet, and I blocked out my whole day. And at the end of the day, there was only, after work, hygiene, sleeping, commuting, whatever, there was only like 2 hours left of time. And I was like, well, how do I free this up? So I said, well, I could go to the dry cleaner once a week, and I could drop off my dirty stuff and pick up the clean stuff. And I don't need my mail every day. I mean, that's nutty, right? And now with Zoom, you connect with people like you and Richie easily, right? And Tina. So it's all interconnected, and trying to de-stress and create time for a better balance and more health and wellness.
So show's been around for 6 months so far, from what I see. You got it right around Christmas time you started. And the guests you have on, obviously, they would be the best examples or role models that would people that would be basically following the same kind of message that you're giving. Like the same tenets, they basically apply what you believe in. They are already living the dream. And you're also just trying to make other people live that same dream. Now, what have you learned so far in those 6 months doing the show in terms of steering the content and the direction, what the audience says right now? What do you think right now so far about, what the numbers say, what people have resonated best to?
Yeah, so the first thing I found out was running podcasts is hard. It's a tough job. With the app, because I build the app, so I'm an app developer as well. So I built the app to try and save some money and time, and I edit the podcasts. So I pretty much do a lot of the admin work for it, and that's the first thing I found is that actually doing it as a job is bloody hard. And then trying to find the right guests. Tina, and it's a shame she can't be here today, but she's currently on a flight. She was in India, invited to India to do some public speaking.
But I bet the thing is she's probably been really good at being able to create networking connections and say, hey, you should be on the show, and all the kind of different speaking engagements. I'm sure of that, yeah.
Yeah, and she honestly, because she lives over in LA, she just knows a lot of people, and it's fantastic. So she's really kind of between Arthur and Tina. They've really drawn a lot of great people in, and we sent a message out to people to say, hey, look, it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. We had the vice president of CNN News on not too long ago, and just different backgrounds, so many different backgrounds to say, hey, look, it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, you can be successful if you put the effort in. And that's really kind of where the productivity side comes from, is that these days, and I talk as a 41-year-old man, and my wife and I have 6 kids between us, aging from 18 down to 4. So we kind of see this cross-section of society as a youngster within its entire bandwidth. So, taking Caitlin, who's 18, she's back in England, it's a struggle. It's an absolute struggle. A, to know who you are. B, how to fit in. And C, what the hell do you want to do? Because even at 18, I had no idea. I'm at 41 and I'm just finding a job that I really enjoy with the podcast and the app. And we started a charity as well that we can potentially touch on during the show. But, there's just so much that I'm incorporating into my life now that's taken me 41 years to find what the heck I want to do. And for our listeners, to answer your question, we have older listeners, but what we really want to do is we really want to kind of bring it down to a level where younger listeners can come to the show. They can listen to the podcast. They can take something away from it that will enable them to go forward with a pathway so that they can maybe achieve what we've tried to achieve, Arthur and I, in 60 odd years and 40 odd years. Maybe they can do it in their 20s and flip it on its head, because back in the 80s and 90s, it was all about you need to get a good job, you need a career path, you need to work for 40 years. And then maybe if you're lucky, you can retire at 65, 70. But actually now, because of the way society is and the technology they have at their hands, they can become millionaires and they can become super rich overnight if they just have a good idea, or B, they're great at something. And so really that's kind of where we're at. We market at those individuals who are in their 30s, 40s and potentially looking at a new career. But we really want to move into the market where we want to teach youngsters to be able to do something fantastic with their lives.
Now, I want to unpack a couple of things off of that. So when it comes to younger listeners and attracting them, the one thing is a lot of the guests you have on have probably been, from what it looks like from the roster, a lot of, they went through the same kind of process. Again, however they found their career field initially, a career field that would have been very conventional, needs to be called educated, go through the processes, and then they decided, we're going to take that entrepreneurial detour. You know what? Mm-hmm. We're going to get off of this. We're going to break the chains. We're not going to be held down and controlled. We want to be on our own, carving our own path. We see a lot of that now with younger viewers, obviously, or younger listeners that would listen in, that probably are influenced a lot by social media or internet, or just what they could do with social media in general, being influencers. And just think, well, I want to just go that route now. I don't need to worry about going into the work field and trying to go to that corporate ladder. We don't want to do that anymore. That's a passé. And hell, I'm thinking about the fact that graduation seasons right now as we're recording early May. And I just came back this weekend for my niece's graduation, University of South Florida. Public health degree she got. But I'm thinking about, okay, 680 some odd students. How many of those, which were, by the way, predominantly women, by far more women than you could imagine, how many of them are going to actually make it through and say, we're going to stay in this field, or they're going to go make that detour themselves? Because I feel like that's happening more now, because the corporate ladder doesn't offer, it doesn't entice the same benefits anymore. Obviously, COVID changed everything too, with the idea of being stuck in an office all day. And, if you want to live somewhere where you want to live close to where you work, and the amount of money it is right now to sustain. Richard, I mean, for yourself to go take that detour, 6 kids, you're writing books, you're working on the app, you're doing the podcast, but it's a lot of hustle. Outside of that, which could have been another job that you don't like, but might have taken care of the bills, but still, no matter what, it's, some people are going to feel it's a risk. How do you take that risk factor off of them?
Yeah, so I think the younger you start, the better it is. Because, for me, I joined the Army, the British Army, at 20 years old. So I served 15 years in the British Army, and it was pretty much like being a corporate job. You climb the ladder, if you were good enough and you were in the right place, and we have a saying, face fits. So if your face fits the job, then you'll get promoted. But if you could work your ass off all the time and for 2-3 years, and you might not actually get promoted above someone whose face fitted that particular role. So being in the military it mirrors what happens in, certainly what I've learned from corporate America, is that you can be passed over, and any job's that way inclined. So I think you start younger and you find out, and this is what I say to Caitlin. So Caitlin's 18, and I say to her, look, you try everything. Don't hammer down on one thing. I want you to go out there and I want you to do everything possible. So do you want to jump out of an aeroplane with a parachute on your back and go do it? If that's what excites you and gets you going, go and do it. If you want to go and work in a restaurant because that's what you like, go and do that. There is no wrong answer, but as long as you're enjoying the time. And it was really interesting. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and he said to me, look, as a child, you sacrifice, you exchange time for knowledge. And that's what school's all about. It's time for knowledge. But then when you become an adult, I know it's 21 over here, but when you're classed as an adult, you're exchanging your time for money. And you've got to be okay with the amount of money that you're receiving for that time. And if you're not, then you've got to question it. And that's something you can learn from a very early age, that if you're in a job at $15 an hour and you don't feel that $15 an hour is good enough for the effort you're putting in, then just get the hell out of it. Go and try something different. And it's easy for me to say sitting in, a house in New York. Fantastic. But, I'm talking from experience where from the age of 14, I worked, and I've done, in the Army, I must have done at least 10 different jobs. Mm-hmm. And I never found where I fitted in until I started working where I was enabling other people. I've been a counselor and a therapist, a mediator, you name it, I've done it. Why? Because I didn't find my particular place that I felt comfortable in.
Now, Arthur, I want to go and transition to you real quick. You're the CPA, financial planner, real estate mortgage banker, and author, and you graduated from the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania, worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers to do accounting and auditing. You got your MBA at Columbia University, worked at Citibank, at JP Morgan Chase, obviously the big bankers world. I mean, the stock market, I can imagine all the things you were working go there, spoke, obviously, at a lot of different conferences and all, and connected with a lot of different people as well. And been on radio, television, there's a lot there. So, I mean, obviously, you're in that route now. You've been so seasoned with your experience and what you've done with your career. And now it's like, okay, now you're just the expertise, you're spreading the wealth. You're spreading the wealth of knowledge that you've gotten after all your years of work. And in some areas, you have the books that you do right now. There's several books you have written recently, and I want to talk about Richard's books as well, but How to Finance Commercial Real Estate, and more recently, Save Money on Groceries, 15, 25% or more year in and year out. All these things right here, it's, the knowledge base, you're making sure you can pass it along to others to learn from you. So what do you take away from what you synergize with Richard and with Dr. Tina to put the show Proactive together?
I go back to my dad. God bless him. He's 92 years old. 1932. So he was born in the Depression.
Yeah.
And he was like, And I think that generation was the same, right? Like, oh, you got to take this traditional path. And I think that the key to success is, like Richie was saying, figure out who you are, figure out where you are, and push the envelope a little bit, even a little bit, and say, okay, here's my boundary, my zone of comfort. If I push it out a little bit, and then get a realistic sense of who you are, what your skills are, what skills you want to build, but also what happens if I fail? People say fail forward, right? So I've learned the most things universally from making mistakes. You hope they're not big ones, but and then you say, okay, and get a good network around you, and get some mentors, and find out what you need to learn and experience to punch your card, and realize that it's an incremental growth trajectory. And then all of a sudden, if you stay around the hoop, I used to play rec soccer until a year or two ago, actually, when I lost my gumption. I was in pretty good shape.
Right.
But my friend Carmelo, he scored the most goals. He was closer to Richie's age. And I said, what's your secret? He said, I hang around the net. Hang around the net, right? And I'm like, wow, I thought it was some, protein filled or some, cool training. He goes, no, it's just an odds game, right? So if you keep at it long enough and you want something, your odds are much more likely you're going to succeed. So that's my takeaway and what we try to share with the people who tune in.
Now, the word proactive, to me, it's one of the most important components of what I do in a career. So and my broadcasting career goes back 30 years, whether it's newspaper, television, radio, and now podcasting. Broadcast and radio, one and the same, let's just be honest. But one of the things I always wanted to do for myself was I hated the corporate aspect of like, well, do what you're told, here's your task list, and do it. But my thing is that I wanted to be done, and I wanted to be able to focus on other things. So I wanted to get whatever's on my plate off my plate as quickly as possible. And I always wanted to plan for anything that's going to come in that could disrupt that could be a bit of an issue. So like for me, if it's scheduling if I have, one of the podcast networks that I work for now, Cannabis Radio, right? And there's a thing where, we have a process of, if any breaking news or anything happens, holiday season, whatever it is, 420, all these different areas that, I have all these PR clients that want to go ahead and reach out to us to put their clients on our podcasts and two of the podcasts that I host all the time. And, when I say for 420, it's a very important sales holiday, but it's like, these people normally would go to the other podcasters. Oh, we'll reach out to you like about a week before. No, you don't do it with me. Here's the way I got a plan for you. Schedule it. I want 6 weeks advance. Like, don't give me the last minute thing. If it's conferences, I'm not going to go to a conference and just expect to just run the mill and maybe I'll just get lucky and meet some good people. No. I schedule events. I schedule and plan. And I think about, even with vacations, I plan it out to the T. Like, of course you make room for other things to do. And other things to change, obviously cards something to change. But for me, I like to come up with a game plan. I like to make sure I have something ready to go so that, it's to streamline the process, make sure I'm ready for anything that happens and be prepared for whatever event or other things that are going on. Like I have a process in place and it makes it easier for me to go ahead and then intake anything else that's coming along. So what do you think about the aspect of proactive? How do you best define how that represents what the podcast is?
Yeah, so I'm on board with what you're saying. I think planning is failing to plan is planning to fail, and you do have a sense that if you have something in place, you're talking about there having 6 weeks prior, enough of time to be able to then research, find out who you're talking to, ask the right questions, make a great podcast, get the right people on, make sure that they are who they say they are, and they can talk about what they say they want to talk about. And, so for instance, as an example, I wrote the book with regards to people being able to plan better. And it's all the information that I learned over the years in the Army. And since about 2010, I've suffered with PTSD. I served in Afghanistan. And I really struggled with my life, and things fell apart, and I couldn't plan for shit. And it took me a lot of time to get through that, and a lot of therapy to come through it for me to be able to start to plan my life again, to find out who I was, now post PTSD, and to find out how I can achieve the goals that I want to achieve. So I wrote a book, Productivity and Wellness, and it's a step-by-step guide. It's really simple. It's basic, lowest level you can, it doesn't matter who you are. You could be the smartest person in the world, or like me, Joe Average, and you can read it and take away something from it. And the podcast mirrors really what I was achieving in the book. We want people to come on. We ask them specific questions, and much like yours, we would do the same. We want to know who these people are and what can they bring to our listeners. We always say, what's the one last tip that you can give our listeners? And everyone gives a different answer because everyone's lived a different life, and it's really important to understand that it doesn't matter. You could be twins, and you'll still live different paths. So everyone has something different, and we have for a wide variety of individuals who come on from scientists to we had Sharratt, who came on, who's is a really good friend of ours. He runs a fantastic marketing company, and he came from nothing, and it's amazing to hear their stories, and for us it's quite uplifting. So the proactive side of it is you've got these people who have been to the lowest, scraping the barrel. People have been homeless, alcoholics, and they built themselves up. They've been proactive, and they built themselves up to be these successful individuals.
You're talking about Sharratt Cigar. Most recently, your guest actually just on a recent episode of Proactive. Yeah. Editor and co-founder of Mission Matters Media. I see that. Also about the book, I want to make sure you give the full title for those. By the way, the books we're talking about here, they're both available on Amazon or bookstores everywhere. Productivity and Wellness: The Key to a Brighter Future. And I want to ask you about this now, because obviously for both of you, you came out of careers, or you came out of areas that required discipline, required real attention to detail. So, Richard, when it came to your Army background, obviously the basic training, that sticks with you, and that obviously does give you that certain mindset to bring you back to where you are. Obviously, the things that you dealt with, when you had to go and get deployed, whatever assignments you were given, obviously they came back with a number of issues where, and that goes along with a lot of things where, people in life, if they go through traumatic events, if they go through PTSD, or they're going through anxiety or depression or various issues that are holding them back or kind of just preventing them to really succeed. The area you talk about in Productivity and Wellness, the book, is fitness and health. But I can tell you that the Cannabis Radio Network, we also not just talk about plant medicine, we also not talk about cannabis, but we also talk about psychedelics on the network. So we're getting a lot of people on that route that, they feel like, well, this is a route for us to go and just take. We can find treatments, we can find, solutions in that way, and find various wellness patterns, holistic ideas, alternative medicines, and the like. What do you think about the fact of what people can do? And a lot of times it's like you don't really need to have any outside sources or foreign objects put inside of you. You could do it from within your core, within you, who you are, your chi. Talking about the idea of, for those that you feel like that are looking for their way to go ahead and be more productive, and if they feel like to help their clarity, get happier, better energy, that some people go to this other route. What do you say about that if they're deviating from the idea of just saying, better fitness, better, way of living your life, and, making sure you put the right things in your body? What do you say about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, oddly, Arthur and I, a couple of months ago, had this conversation, and we said to ourselves, look, great, we write books, we've got a podcast, we've got an app that people can download for free, and everything on there's for free, content-wise. But what are we missing? And the reality was, it was the connection between people. So we started a charity called Mentality Matters, which actually it's quite new. And we've only kind of birthed it not too long ago. I think it's a few weeks old now, officially. It was incorporated. But we are looking to work with individuals who maybe the mainstream style of, if they are in a low place, so whether that's therapy or whether that's, the internal workings where they can work through things, isn't right for them. We are looking to run retreats around the country, and there's potential that we are looking at Hawaii as well. And we're looking to make a community for us specifically. It's for men. And I get asked the question, why men? And I say, because I'm a man and I know what men are about. I don't know what women are about as much as I can pretend. I'm not a woman. So I for me, we said, I understand men's mental health. And if you call yourself a man, then, your mentality will be the same. So that's hence the name Mentality Matters. A friend of ours, he works in the holistic side of things, and he does plant medicine, and he swears by it. Right. We're talking specific names. He tells me all the time, and there's no way in heck I'm going to try and pronounce them. Right. But he finds it's 100% rate of success when it comes to them. Mm-hmm. So finding a different way it's right for you, as long as it is right for you, and you're willing to try something different, then that's okay. And for a lot of people, it might not be. California read the other day, they're looking at passing a bill that allows veterans and others who are suffering with PTSD and traumatic psychological events that are long-lasting. They're looking to actually allow them a trial to see if these plant medicines work for them. So it's really interesting. I think it's coming through with America legalizing weed, and we all know that the CBD side of things, there's two parts to weed. You've got the stuff that you smoke to get high, and then you've got, the oil, which actually has been proven in the UK now that is really effective at healing.
Right.
So I don't think there's a boundary. I don't think people should limit themselves, but I do think that it needs to be right for you, and you need to find your own path and the right path, and whether that's reading a book and taking away ideas from the book and trying them, because that's really important. You've got to physically go out and try these and try and implement them in your life. Or whether it's go and speak to a therapist or go and do one of the special ceremonies where you can incorporate this holistic healing through the medicines, plant medicines. Just find what's right for you. And I think that's really important. And that's something that you should ask yourself as a listener. Where are my boundaries, and am I able or willing to extend them? Or do I want to keep them where they are and try something that's within my own comfort zone?
Now, I want to mention that there's a lot of different animals now. Obviously, you just said it right, that even in America, there's a lot more treatments being allowed and available. So, more legalization of psychedelics are happening in more states. That's happening a lot. Ketamine treatments being made very well available. People that want to go ahead and go out of country to go to ayahuasca treatments, or, they want to try ibogaine. That's also been very popular, from a couple of doctors we already talked to right now on on our network. They swear by it, and they see so much effectiveness and so much turning around of people that might feel suicidal to the brink of losing it all, and just turning it right back around. So again, best for you. Arthur, I want to get back to you now, because in your background, I want to get now to your book about save money on groceries, because I get the mentality I think about, and the book I remember reading that I was recommended back in the day was The Millionaire Next Door. Right? And the thing is that you have the wherewithal and the means to show it off, to, hey, here's the fruits of my labor. Here's what I got. Look at me, right? We get a lot of that now. Social media amplifies it and encourages it. That's why we have influencers in the first place. But I know for myself, I have my money put away, and when it comes to grocery shopping, oh my God, I'm looking for deals. I'm like, and for people that are right now on the inflationary times we have, there was a story I saw in the news about, you go to different shops, you find different deals. You don't just go to the same store and find what you need. You don't go to just Trader Joe's or Aldi's or whatever and find what you need, or Whole Foods. No, you go shopping, and you go looking around for the deals. You go coupon clipping back, like we would call it, but that's what it is. It's living within your means. Even right now, I think about if I might buy something that I might use later, it's like I'm always looking for deals. And I'll have money once a good deal comes in, and it's something I'm going to use, okay, then I'm going to go and buy it. And I'll only have a couple of things that I might splurge on, but even if I splurge, it's also, I'm being, frugal about it. Hell, I buy one of my favorite pair of brands of shoes, sneakers or Filas. I've been wearing them 30 years. And you know what? If the website for them, Fila.com, or if some store has the shoes and they have it on a sale price, I'm going to buy it. And I have, 7 shoe boxes now of shoes I haven't worn yet. but I'm going to get to wear them. But my thing was, I'm going to buy them now because those shoes would normally be $80 to $150, and I'm buying them at $20 to $50 a pop. It's just a matter of smart about it. I want to be able to go ahead. And, if I want to have a good car, I want something that's practical, logical. And everything is practical with me. It's not about, I don't care about trying to show off anybody else. I mean, yeah, if I need to get a good suit for some event, yeah, I'll make sure I get something that's going to look good. Quality. Everything's quality I want to buy. But also, if I can be cheap about it, I'm going to try to do that too. But I think we get that mindset now. I mean, even I bet you when you were working in finance, that was one thing people did. You had a lot of people that were, they were posers. They were trying to chase clout. And so if they can move themselves up the ladder, hey, look at me, boss man, CEO, look at what I'm doing. It's that kind of mindset that's being perpetuated now more than ever. But I'm sure that's not what you're trying to teach on the podcast or in your books.
Not at all. I think the practical things work. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and I draw from experience. So when I was an auditor, we used to go count inventory for the audits to make sure the stuff was in the warehouse.
Right.
And one of the things I say in the book is go look in your cabinets before you go to the supermarket. Okay. And Richie tells me I got to eat better. So I bought some green grapes and celery. Okay. I didn't do the inventory on Friday before I went to the supermarket on Saturday. Lo and behold, I had them. So now I got extras, and those are not going to be good. So I wasted my money, right? And you take this practical approach of putting my accountant's hat on for a second. What the product you see at eye level may not be the best, most economical product per ounce. So one is whether you'll use it before it spoils, but two, if you really want to pull out your smartphone and do some math,
right?
May not, right? But the big jumbo size may not be the cheapest per ounce, right? So you got to take these things. And I could go on.
Well, the Costco shopper, not everything is a good deal. Sometimes you just got to, and also, like you said, the expiration dates, I keep an eye on that. But I also will say this too, in the time now, sometimes that they're, when you go to a good store and they're buying a lot of product and there's not much on the shelves, one of the things I can't believe I see a trouble is with it. I like to buy egg whites in the car, like egg beaters, and I'll make omelets with them in the morning for breakfast.
Yeah.
But sometimes I can't find on the shelf. Like I'll tell you, one of my favorite stores to go shopping is Target. For grocery shopping, it's great because I already know what the layout is and all. And like Walmart's just a little bit too crowded. The deals are like, but is it worth going in there and dealing with the traffic and like how much time it takes? When I can go to a Target, get 30 minutes in there, find everything I need, basically the basics, and out in 30 minutes, and I'm not breaking the bank. It's those things that I think about. It's time, it's money, and sometimes I will stack away on certain groceries if I need to. Because you never know. It's like, I know I'm going to use it, but it's also, I like to make sure I don't have to worry about I'm running short on it. I just want to make sure I'm never short on anything. I just make sure ahead. But that's what I do. And I think it's those kind of things where you can add proactivity in your whole life and everything that you do. And is that basically the real idea of what the show's really trying to encompass?
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in any part of the life, you can be proactive at work, home, gym, mind, body, soul, wherever it is you want to be proactive. As long as you put the effort in, you'll achieve it.
Amazing. I love the message you're giving here. Again, proactive is a very important word to me. And that was the first thing I noticed when we were getting the show together and putting this on. I want to also mention about where you have your also co-host, Dr. Tina Cooper-Smith, who runs the West Coast Women's Reproductive Center in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And I want to know what it is about where you thought her work in OBGYN, reproductive endocrinology and fertility, her work as a doctor in general, I want to know what it is that she adds to the mix, that how you would explain it best.
Well, she and I go back to high school, believe it or not, many years. So we're not going to go into that story.
But that's awesome. You know each other for so long, and you've been able to know exactly where you were and how far you've come along. That's
exactly. Great. Oh, you have no idea. So be that as it may, she is a fertility specialist. She's a terrific women's doctor. She's a lifelong learner. Mm-hmm. She's actually trying to changed the field of health globally.
Right.
Where she says that it's preventive medicine that's really saves you, what you put in your body. And she's a scientist. So one of the things she does is she looks at the statistics behind how an individual person, namely women, she does have some male patients actually, but how a woman would react to certain foods and vitamins and inputs, because everybody has a DNA, everybody has an internal chemistry. And how do you optimize that? How do you fine tune it so you're healthy? And then she also is a certified sexuality coach from Miss Jaya, Jaiya. So she totally takes this holistic health approach, and she's a graduate of Duke University as well as Duke Medical, and she's a tremendous resource and a kind person. So she's giving. So she's a tremendous offset to Richie and I, who don't have maybe the softer side all the time.
Or the health and fitness and medical end, just exactly. That's why I wanted to go and find out how that works out, because it was also the part of your mind, body, and health. You would need somebody to be that medical component, and your qualifications speak for itself. So one thing I want to ask now, for those that do want to go ahead and be more productive in life, want to take that approach and say, I'm going to break free of the chains of the corporate ladder, the wage jobs. I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere with this. Or, you're just saying to yourself, you know what? I've put aside a good nest egg. I want to invest it into something else. What's the next phase of my life, my career field? Or is it another new career I want to be in? So obviously you have the app Productivity Go for a knowledge base of resources and help with productivity, planning, fitness, and well-being. So the apps there are available for people. The podcast is available. But if you had to ask somebody that question, if they're kind of stuck in a rut, they're saying to themselves, well, I don't know if I feel, that anxiety of like, I don't know if I can make that next step. It's very uncomfortable. Now there's a risk being taken. What do you say to those people that they want to do this? What do they need to go and do to make them go over the edge and say, okay, I'm going to make the attempt. I'm going to actually try to do this. I'm going to commit to it.
Yeah. Stacking. So I've got a rule. The first thing every single day you should do is make your bed. You make your bed, you've achieved something. And if you do nothing else that day, you've achieved one thing that day. But then in psychology, certainly the NLP, so the neuro-linguistic programming that I'm trained in, you stack upon that. So you wake up, you make your bed. Amazing. You get a shower, you clean your teeth. And before you know it, you're stacking all these amazing things that you're doing. You go to work. If you need to get a coffee, get that coffee. So what, it costs $10 or whatever it is, because New York's crazy. You put that into your program, and that's something that's helping you achieve your goal for the day. And you'll find that over time, because you're constantly stacking, you're creating a routine. And it's a natural routine that you do every single day.
Right.
And studies find that if you can make it a routine, you're more successful in what it is you want to be able to move forward with. So by stacking those great things and not worrying about the setbacks, because there's three planes of existence, and this is the last thing I'll touch on with regards to the psychology side of things. There's three planes of existence. You've got the past, the now, and the future. With the past, you're living in depression. The future, you're living in anxiety. And the only time when you're totally free is when you're living in the now. So live today, live in the moment, and just stack all those amazing things up. And over time, you will either become more confident, more able, or more willing to do that thing that you feel that you need to do.
I like that. I like that a lot. I haven't heard that said that way before, but I appreciate that. Arthur, how would you add to that?
I would say you got to draw on your skills. Not that you can't learn new skills, but I love checklists, which Richie touched on before, which was the genesis of this whole thing. And some people might call this anal, whatever.
Anal retentive, yeah.
Yeah, nuts, right? But I have a Saturday morning routine checklist. And there's 6 categories with things I got to do, like check my bank balances. I have that vitamin box, so I fill it up. So I, make sure I take the right vitamins and nutrients every day.
Right.
Save time during the week. There's a financial section. There's errands where I'll go out of the house and, other things and some periodic tasks, right? So I actually printed out old school. And then what I do is I cross out what I don't want to do that week. And then what's left I may want to do. And as I do it, I see it. I cross it out. And I have this every week. And for a while, it was driving me nuts. It was probably driving Richie and Tina nuts too. But the thing is, if you have the universe of things you may want to do, which may not be relevant this Saturday or next Saturday or last Saturday, you have a framework. And then the other thing I like to do is I like to put key tasks in Outlook as an event, a meeting for myself, right? And then sometimes it's going to slip. But I know tomorrow I have to call Tina in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I got to call her. And maybe it doesn't work. But eventually that's going to get there because it's staring me in the face and saying, you need to do this. And the key is one of the best words in the English language. And I am a positive person. But one of the best words is no, right? You know what? I can't do this right.
Correct.
It's not. And because it goes back to boundaries, self-confidence, growing, but also noting time-wise, there's only so many hours in the day. So if I give Richie my 30 minutes that I needed I'm bald, right, if you don't see me, but, getting a haircut, whatever, right, then I don't have 30 minutes to do something else. So if I need to write something for the podcast or write something for the app, right, I need to do that. So there's only so many times. So you have to be true to yourself and crystallize the mission so that you can make progress. And then, I actually have done a lot of sales training for people in financial services. And I say, look, there's plenty of opportunity all around you, but you have to be proactive, which is the name of the podcast, right? You have to grab it. People are not going to give it to you. You need to go get it. And I think combining what Richie said and what Tina would say if she were here and hopefully what I've said, you get this combination and the things are changing all the time. So what may be 10% of something today might be 15 or 7% next time. So you have to keep moving and looking and keep moving forward somehow. And I think it's the combination of all of that gets you towards the finish.
I would add one more thing to that because there's also when you don't have time, again, those disruptions, some of this is going to disrupt your routine because that is pretty specific. And you can put aside time, but it's a limited amount of what you're going to be able to do. But how many times do we get a phone call or something else that just wrecks the routine? I had to happen 4 times last month. And I'm like, and it frustrates the hell out of me. And man, I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying to lose weight. I'm trying to get money in the bank, put more away. And it's like, I don't need this stoppage of the system here. Okay, let's stop. Give me back. I want the presses back on. Okay, stop. I don't want to stop the presses anymore. And that's one of those things where I have to just remind myself, like sometimes, I can't avoid, it's unavoidable. There's going to be some disruptions. There's going to be some things that are going to get in the way of your routine. Just deal with it and just move on. You'll get to it again, whatever it is. It's that part too. Like, look, I got right now, I know what's on my plate of work. And I'll tell you, the procrastinator in me, sometimes I can't stand that, man. I was like, shit, I have other stuff I got to take care of. And I wish I could just get it done right now. But it's like, I also just can't stress about it. It's like, it's going to sit there. I got to make time for it. And if I don't have time for it, I'm not, when I was younger, I would stress out a lot about it, especially if I was in a corporate environment. Now I don't. Because what do you want me to do? I have clients to serve. I have family to take care of. It's a lot. And there's just not enough time in the day. Rich, I don't know how you do it with 6 kids and a wife and you even have the time because I can only imagine the kids take a lot of away, they can only do so much themselves, but it's like, all various different ages, are they going out to play sports, whatever graduations or, events they have, whatever extracurricular they have aside from school. I can only imagine how much time you have to stay to the routine and sometimes how that routine can stay, but you try to stick as close to it as you can.
Yeah, you do. But there's ways and means, for me, time is relevant to the individual that's viewing it. So for me, a fantastic routine that I came up with was I break my day down. I forget the whole 24-hour scenario. I say, okay, look, how much sleep do I need? Realistically, how much sleep do I need? Okay, well, that's sleep. Can't not do that. But okay, well, I'm going to break my one day. So you might have one day. Well, actually, I'm going to break that into 2 days because that means I'm going to be more achievable when it comes to the goals that I have for that day. So I'll say, okay, well, my morning is my first day. And in that day, I'm going to give myself 6 hours to complete those goals. And then I break down the afternoon and go, well, that's my second day. within that 24-hour period. And so I look at time relevant to the situation. And I think if you can achieve that in your life as well, this whole clock system that we have just draws everyone to this time. We need to look at our watch and we need to stick to this time. And I think actually we can break that, and we can break that psychology behind it. Your day can be whatever you want it to be. Chikuma is a fantastic guy who is on board with us. He's one of the directors on the charity. Him and I had a very in-depth conversation about this, and he now lives that life. And he breaks his day down. So what you would class as one day, he puts it into 3 days. And he was working 3 jobs at one point, very successfully, because in his mind, he said to himself, well, that's one day and that's one job. And that's going to take up X amount of energy within a 24-hour period. So I need this much energy and I need this much energy. And he just made it work. And it really does work. If you look at time differently, then you can achieve anything you want.
Wow. We're going to leave it there. Gentlemen, I really appreciate you taking time to go and talk to me again. Let me just go through a little bit of plugging here just to make sure everybody knows all that's going on here. Initially, the Proactive Podcast is available all major podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any podcast directory. Is there a main site for the show, or is just go look for it on those different podcast portals?
You can find it on any portal. It's on rss.com is the main place that we upload, but it's spread out everywhere. So Spotify, all the big places, Apple, I think, is another one. So it's everywhere. You can go anywhere on your mobile phone or at home and listen to it.
Then there's Productivity Go, Unleash Your Potential one task at a time. So you can find that in the iTunes Store or Google Play. The books we were talking about when it comes to Richard Sharratt, Productivity and Wellness, like to get to a brighter future. You can find that in Kindle or paperback on Amazon and other bookstores. Arthur Van Dam's books, Save on Money on Groceries, 327 Ways to Cut Your Grocery Bills and More, and How to Finance Commercial Real Estate. You can also find it on Amazon, also on bookstores, but available in Kindle. And finally, for Dr. Tina Cooper-Smith, she has her own website, TinaCoopersmith.com, Kooper is the spelling on that last name. And anything else I had missed out that you want to also make mention of here? I know you mentioned Mentality Matters. How can people also be involved in that?
No, amazing. So we are in the early stages. We look out for our fundraisers. We are going to be national when it comes to that. There'll be a website. It's going to be mentalitymatters.org. It's not up yet, but it will be in the next couple of weeks. Any help that people can give, whether it's time or money, very appreciative.
Gentlemen, thank you again for being on. Richard Sharratt, Arthur Van Dam from the Proactive Podcast. Thank you both for being on with us. Really appreciate you taking time out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. And that's going to do for Podcasters Real for this week. Again, we'll be back with new episodes. Just keep an eye out for them. And I'll talk to you next time.